Okay, it's 12 o'clock, so why don't we go ahead and get started? First of all, good afternoon, and I certainly appreciate you joining us today for another HR Corner. I'm Steve Schilling, the moderator, the director of the Small Business Development Center, headquartered at Kent State University, Tuscarawas. For those that are not familiar with our organization, we are a nonprofit providing business assistance on a confidential, no-cost basis. Have specialized counselors with marketing backgrounds, food service, leadership, finance and accounting, QuickBooks and bookkeeping, computer technology, patents, copyrights and trademarks, and most importantly, HR, which is what we're going to talk about today. We have muted everybody for the speaker's benefit. If you have questions, please use the chat room. You can find that either at the bottom ribbon below your screen or up in the upper right-hand corner. If you just hover your mouse over Show Conversation, you can type in there your questions and I'll monitor those to the best of our abilities. The workshop is being offered to provide some hands-on HR training. Very pleased to have on the call today Joanna Forbes. Joanna has 20 years of human resource experience in various industries, including healthcare, manufacturing, food and restaurant, service, and nonprofit. She is a certified HR professional with the Society of Human Resource Management. She owns her and serves as the chief HR consultant for Forbes Human Resources, a local HR consulting firm, while also serving as an HR advisor for the SBDC. And we're so proud to have her as part of our organization. She does a great job. We'll talk about her ability to handle your direct questions after the presentation and on an ongoing basis. But she is available for that direct assistance, so don't hesitate to reach out to either Joanna or myself, and we'll make sure we get you connected. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be found on our website probably in the next week or so. So if you missed something or want to listen to it again, feel free to go to our website, and I'll type that into the chat room for those that aren't familiar with it. The slides that we're reviewing today will be emailed to you at the conclusion of the session. If you have suggestions or recommendations on other topics that you'd like to discuss or like to hear more about, please put that in the chat room and we'll do our best to accommodate. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Joanna.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Welcome, everybody. If this is not your first HR Corner, welcome back. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, these are shorter webinars. We usually have them pretty much wrapped up within 30 minutes. So these are short ones today that we hope will give you some quick tips that you can take right back to the workplace and use. So again, like Steve said, this will be emailed to everybody. And also, since today we're going over forms, if there's any form today that you would like or you need assistance with, please reach out. I always like to remind everybody that today's presentation is for informational purposes only. We work with many different industries, so please refer to your specific industry standards and regulatory agencies to stay compliant on all mandatory and recommended business practices. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about the required federal forms for all of your employees. We're going to be talking about typical new employee paperwork that you should be having your employees complete upon hire. We're going to be talking about Ohio new hire reporting, and then we'll finish up with some final reminders and questions. Okay, so first up, new employee paperwork. So this is something that really should be done during the employee's first day of orientation. Typically, we're so excited to have a new employee start, and we want to get them hit the ground running. So we want to put them on the machine or get them behind the counter or get them behind the desk, whatever it is that they're going to be doing for us. But it is so important to have a standard time in place that all of these new employee paperwork and all of the forms can be completed so nothing gets looked over. So you want to make sure that those paperwork packets are complete and that when the employee completes them, that they give everything back to you on that first day. That is so important. If not, it tends to get overlooked and then we forget about it. And then weeks and sometimes even months go past and we don't have those required forms. The other thing that I want to start off by saying is that it's very important to give those new employees a notice on what documents that they should bring on their first day, so they come prepared, because the last thing you want is for them to leave on that first day owing you something, because again, they're going to be learning so much that first week, those first few weeks, that you don't want them to have to try to remember to bring in a voided check or their driver's license or anything. So again, giving them notice beforehand so they come to that first day, confident, prepared, and they have everything that they need. So let's talk about the federal forms that we should be using. You've seen all of these before, I'm sure, so I'm just going to point out some things, just some reminders and just some things to remember. First off, at the top here, so this is our W-4 form. We've all seen this. We've all completed one of these before. All of our employees that are on our payroll, so not any independent contractors or working for us, should be completing the W-4 form. So up at the top, I have just pointed there 2020. So every year the IRS issues a new W-4 form. That does not mean that you need your employee to complete it every year. That just means that you should keep the most current form for your employees. So just kind of remember to go and print off that new PDF straight from the IRS website. So this, of course, is the form where employees will choose their tax withholding, and page 1 is the one that you need, and page 2 through 4 is the instructions, the worksheet, and of course the tax tables. So whoever does your payroll, whether you have an outside accounting company doing your payroll or an outside payroll agency, or if you're smaller, you may just do it straight in-house, this would need to go to the person that's administering your payroll. Now here's the I-9 form. So I want to spend a couple minutes on this because this is very important and this can be a little confusing. This form looked the same for many, many years. In almost my 20 years of HR experience. And just recently, the last couple years, they finally gave it a little bit of a facelift. Again, I want to point out at the top where you see that red arrow, this particular version of the form expires on October 31st, 2022. So usually the Department of Labor will update this form every couple years, and there may not even be an update, but they will change that date at the top. So again, try to remember to go on every once in a while, just look up at the form and say, am I using the most current of this form? Again, free PDF on the Department of Labor website. If anybody needs the link to that, please just let us know. So the purpose of this form is it verifies the identity and the employment authorization of everybody that you hire. Every employer that hires even one employee needs to have their employees complete this I-9 form. So this is where the employee must provide proof of citizenship to you or their eligibility to work in the United States. And it needs to be within 3 days of their first day of work with you, or you're supposed to terminate them. So I say supposed to because I know that would be a hard thing to do if somebody just simply cannot find their Social Security card or whichever it is that they're looking for. But that is the reality of it. You really should terminate their employment or at least suspend it until they can bring those documents in. So again, all U.S. employers must properly complete the Form I-9 for each employee that they hire. So this form here, what we're looking at here on the left page of my screen is page 1 of the I-9. This is where the employee would complete it. The top section there, and then the middle section where they're going to mark that they're a citizen of the United States, if that is such the case, or if they're a permanent resident. Then they're going to sign it there where it says signature of employee, and then they're going to date it. So that is the employee's portion of the form. On the next slide here, on my left-hand side of the screen, you will see the employer's portion of the form. So this is where you're actually going to collect and examine the documents that they give you, showing you that they are indeed eligible to work in the United States. So what I recommend and this is something you can or cannot do, is if you look at page 3 of the form, which is there in the middle of the screen, those are the documents that employees must provide to you. So one thing from list A or something from list B and list C. So I would say give this page 3 to your new employees. If you give them an offer letter or something that you mail to them before they start, put this page 3 right in there. That way you don't have to read this to them. You don't have to explain this to them. You say right from the get-go that they have to bring in documents for their I-9 forms within their first 3 days employment, and all of their options in there. Now, 9 times out of 10, your employee is going to bring in their driver's license and their social security card, or a passport. So that's typically what you're going to see. You're usually not going to see some of the other things that are on there, but they are acceptable. So that's page 3 of the form. So back to page 2 here for a minute on the left. So that's what you're going to complete. You're going to examine what they give you. A lot of employers take copies, but that's not required. But we've kind of, us old school HR folks have been taking copies of the identification for many years, but that's actually not required. Saying that you saw them and documenting it is fine. So you're going to complete, whether it's something from list A, B, or C. And then you're going to sign it with your credentials. Again, the signature on this form from you should be within first 3 days of their employment. So again, just a couple more. A very important form is you're not going to mail this in anywhere. You're going to keep it for each person that you hire. The retention guidelines are actually for 3 years after the hire date, but I would recommend just keeping them for everybody that you hire. It's available for inspection if anybody were to come in from the Department of Homeland Security. If anybody on the call today came to the personnel file HR Corner, we talked about where to keep I-9. So just for a reminder for anybody new to this, is you do not put I-9 forms in the personnel file. They do go into a separate binder. Alphabetized, all of your employees on the shelf, easy to reach in case anybody comes in wanting to see proof of work eligibility. Okay, so let's move on. Those were our 2 common federal forms, and now we're going to talk about just workplace forms. So you should have applications on all of your employees. So for those of you on the call that maybe have an applicant tracking system that's electronic, which as we know is very common anymore, especially for larger employees or employers, that is fine. That still counts as an application, even though it's online. You can always print those out if you do indeed hire somebody and put that into their file. So of course, we know what an application is. It's going to have personal information, education, work history, their work preference, and et cetera. But you're going to want to have an acknowledgement on there that if you were to find out that anything on the application was false, that would lead to a revoke of the offer or termination of employment. So if anybody on the call actually doesn't have an application, which is very common for small employers, we do help our clients create applications from scratch, and that is fine. We have some samples. Okay, so the EEO form. So this is something that is voluntary. You do not have to require this in your applicants. Again, if you've ever filled out an application online, a lot of times this is attached to the end. It'll say, now we're going to ask some voluntary information. So this is where you would ask the gender and the race of your applicant or your employees. For anybody on the call today has more than 100 employees, you're required to do the EEO-1 report into the EEOC, and you would have to document this information for all of your employees. But again, this is a voluntary form, but here's a sample one that you could use. And then payroll information, because the application that you have your applicants and your employees complete when they are being considered for hire does not have all of the information that somebody would need to have this person on payroll. Specifically, date of birth and social security number will not be on an employment application. Marital status, gender, none of those things will be on an employment application, but they will need to know date of birth and social for payroll. So you're going to want to have a form where you're going to collect all of the information that your payroll administrator will need to have in order to pay that person. And typically it's a separate form that looks something like this. Again, this is just a sample. Here's the direct deposit form. So again, you may just be collecting voided checks from your applicants, but I strongly recommend that you have an official direct deposit form because you really should have authorization to credit and actually debit that account. If for any reason, if you take monies from your employees, whether it is for a payroll deduction on uniforms or tickets to something, or again, and this happens if there's an error in their pay. I'm sure you've heard about people who receive, a crazy $10,000 paycheck from their employer, and then they try to hurry up and take the money out. You see these things on the news sometimes. So again, the authorization to be to not only credit, but to actually debit as well. And then you're going to have that employee, of course, sign it. And typically you can give your employees up to 2 or 3 banking account information. There's really no limit on that. Okay, emergency contacts. If you're not having them sign this, I highly recommend you have this, again, as a formal form. You may be doing some of these things, or businesses may say, well, we kind of get this stuff as we go, but I highly suggest having this as an actual form on their first day. If something were to happen to that person, you would know exactly who to call for them if they had to go to the hospital or seek medical care and the person could not speak for themselves. And you want to give it to the pertinent people. So typically that's the supervisor and then the general office. A lot of our clients actually don't have HR folks, so you'll have an office manager or a general office, and you're going to want to have a copy in there as well. And I would recommend ask for this every couple years. People have, parents pass away, people get divorced, people get married. So these emergency contacts change. So you want to just give a reminder out to employees every couple years to make sure their emergency contact information is up to date. Employee handbook acknowledgement. So this is something that you're going to have all of your new employees sign upon hire and then re-sign if any of your policies change. So anybody on the call today, if you don't necessarily have an employee handbook, but you do have some policies that they have to abide by, you can use any sort of acknowledgement like this, saying that they received a copy, that they have access to them. But your handbook has to have an acknowledgement form, and you're going to want to have them sign this immediately upon hire on their first day. A physician employment clearance form. So if anybody on the call today has their new employees cleared by a physician, making sure that they can actually perform the essential functions of the job. This is just a sample form saying they can perform them, they can't perform them, or maybe they can with restrictions. Sometimes occupational health doctors will have their own form, but a lot of times though, they'll ask the employer if they have a form that they can just sign. If anybody on the call has to utilize the ODOT regulations as far as pre-employment screenings, they may have their own forms for vision tests and things like that. Then please, use the forms that you're required to use. Benefits or waivers forms. So if anybody on the call today actually, excuse me, offers benefits, any sort of health insurance, life insurance, any sort of retirement plan or pension plan or anything of that nature. If you offer anything to your employees and they decline them, then you're going to want to have them sign a waiver form that pretty much says, I know I was offered these things, but I am waiving them if they're on their spouse's health insurance, which is typically the most common reason why anybody would waive. So you're going to have all of these forms ready to go on the first day. These are the only forms that I would say I would let walk out the door on that first day, because sometimes employees need to, if they don't familiar with the package or what it is you're offering and they need to talk it over with a spouse, then I would let these forms walk out the door. But that would probably be pretty much it. And then again, you would want to have a deadline on when this one would need returned to you. And then any sort of IT, email, computer usage forms should all be ready to go from their first day. If they're getting an email address or any sort of policy that you would want them to sign, all of that should be, again, available on their first day during that orientation. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about Ohio new hire reporting. So if anybody on the call today has hired any employees, or if you're ready to hire your first new employee in the state of Ohio, and most states actually, we have to report all of our new hires with their Social Security number and their date of birth to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. If it's your first time, you'll have to set up, of course, an employer account, and you'll report them. The point of this from the beginning was, of course, to find if there's any folks that were trying not to pay child support. This would catch them if people were, quote, working under the table and now finally working somewhere with W-2 wages. This would catch those folks who maybe were trying to hide from that. So it's crucial. We have to do this. We have to do our Ohio new hire reporting. Again, even if you only have one employee. If anybody needs the link to this, please let us know. We can help you with that. So just some final reminders today as we wrap up. Be consistent having all of your employees sign all of the pertinent forms. So don't just, not just the office staff and then hope that the floor staff will come in and get those forms. Be very consistent. Having them sit down, have that a plan as part of your orientation, and don't delay. Don't give them the packet and then say, have these all back to me by Friday. Don't let those papers walk out the door unless you absolutely have to. And review your forms from time to time, making sure that they're still current, that the data is still current, that they still even make sense. And then make sure all of the forms that maybe things would change for your employees, especially their tax withholding or their emergency contacts. Make sure you reach out to your employees from time to time, making sure that all of that information is still current. Okay, thank you, everybody. That wraps it up for me today. So I'll just turn it back to Steve to see if we have any questions.
Okay, Joanna, thank you again for valuable information. And we do have a couple questions if you have a minute.
Yes.
Okay, so question, we have recipes, trade secrets that we don't want employees to share with anyone. Is that a form that we can have them sign on their first day?
Yes. So if you are running a restaurant or anything like that where you don't want those things to walk out the door, there are some common policies that say that. Sometimes, people might, call that like a non-compete, but it's not really that. It's more that you won't take the trademarked information or trade secrets, as we call them, and walk out the door with them. And basically that form will say, in short, that they could have legal troubles if they do. But you certainly can have them sign off on that. Okay, very good. And correct me if I'm wrong, but for our SBDC clients, you have reviewed handbooks on their behalf, correct? Oh, absolutely. So we do a lot of that through the SBDC. Employers will send their handbook to me, and I'll just look through them and make sure that they have all the policies that they should have. If any, labor laws have changed, such as FMLA or any sort of minimum wage, for example, I'll just remind them that they need to have all of those things updated. And as also creating one if they haven't started or have one in place now, correct? Correct. So I have some basic templates that they can use to go ahead and get themselves started, which we've done many times with our clients. And then usually what they'll plug in their information and then send it back to me just for a quick peek. Okay, so I've been on several of these corners, I guess all of the corners that you've offered. There are a lot of forms. Have you been available or have you done in the past
gone and worked with SBDC clients to maybe do an audit of their files and their forms to make sure they're in place? Is that something that you could do on behalf of
Yes.
SBDC?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I've never formally gone in and done an audit, but as an HR consultant, I do HR audits all the time, and that would be just a part of it, a piece of it. I would look at their files and make sure their their personnel files are what they should be. Again, if anybody on the call, missed the personnel file HR corner, I recommend that one. It kind of piggybacks with what we talked about today. Yes, but absolutely, I could definitely go in and do an audit of their information.
And if an SBDC client, you charge how much?
I charge nothing.
And also then, do I need to be concerned about you reporting any information from that audit to any other, the federal or state agencies?
No, I would come in strictly as a consultant and just recommend changes that you would need to make. I would never report back to any sort of regulatory agency what I found and what I didn't find. And that you make a good point, because I just want to point out, and I always say this to clients that I'm working with, is the government isn't looking to give fines. They're not saying, hey, what are you doing? If you're making a good faith effort and you sincerely don't do something correctly because you don't understand the policy, you weren't aware of that is what you want to do. What they're looking for, the Department of Labor and Homeland Security, et cetera, is they're looking for employers who are making willful decisions in their employment practices, willful misconduct as far as, not paying people the proper wages, even though they know what minimum wage is, or treating one employee differently than another employee in terms of what's required. So that's really what they look for. But if you honestly don't understand what should be in a personnel file, but you're treating all the files the same way, that's different. So I just wanted to say that, so nobody thinks that they're running around looking for errors in things all the time.
Well, and true confession, that was a shameless commercial for the SBDC. We have such a valuable resource in Joanna, and I think any businesses that are out there today, whether you're on the call or have been on previous calls, you should take full advantage of her expertise and knowledge, why it's available. So I think that's it. I thank you again for being on our HR Corner. This has been valuable information. I'd like to thank all the attendees for taking time out of their busy schedule, and let me know if our center can be of any assistance in the future. Have a great rest of the day. We got a thank you from one of our attendees, so I think this was very helpful. Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you.